In the ancient world, war elephants were the ultimate symbol of power and terror. To soldiers on the ground, they were like living fortresses, towering beasts weighing several tons, draped in armor and capable of plowing through tightly packed infantry formations. To face an elephant on the battlefield was to face a moving wall of muscle and tusks, a weapon that could shatter morale long before the first charge even began. Elephants were not just physical weapons, they were psychological ones. Their size, their trumpeting calls, and their unstoppable momentum made them the ancient equivalent of a battlefield tank. They could trample soldiers, break cavalry lines, and turn carefully organized ranks into chaos within minutes. Even the bravest warriors struggled to hold their ground when a beast of such magnitude thundered toward them. Commanders who had access to elephants wielded them with devastating effect. Pyrrhus of Epirus, a Greek general who clashed with Rome in the early 3rd century BC, brought elephants across the seas into Italy. Roman soldiers, who had never seen such animals before, were horrified by their presence. Years later, Hannibal of Carthage perfected the tactic, leading elephants across the Alps and unleashing them in battles against the Roman Republic. For Rome, which relied on the discipline and unity of its legions, elephants posed a nightmare. The question was clear: how could a soldier armed with only a sword and shield possibly resist a beast of this scale? And how could the Romans, no matter their discipline, neutralize an enemy that could break their formations with a single charge? Rome needed an answer. They needed a strategy that could bring down the war elephants and restore balance on the battlefield. When faced with the terrifying power of war elephants, the Romans and their allies turned to a most unlikely weapon: pigs. Ancient historians describe how these ordinary farm animals became instruments of chaos on the battlefield. The method was as brutal as it was ingenious. Pigs were captured, coated in flammable substances like tar, pitch, or oil, and then set ablaze. Once released, the animals charged forward, shrieking in agony as their burning bodies lit the ground beneath them. The effect was horrifying to witness, but it was precisely this horror that made the tactic effective. Elephants, for all their size and strength, had an acute hearing and sensitivity to sound and smell. The high-pitched squeals of the pigs pierced the air, unlike anything the elephants had encountered. Combined with the unbearable stench of burning flesh, the elephants reacted with immediate panic. Instead of pressing forward into Roman lines, the mighty beasts turned in terror, stampeding uncontrollably. In the chaos, they often crushed their own handlers and trampled the very soldiers they were meant to protect. What was once the enemy's greatest weapon suddenly became a disastrous liability, all because of a herd of burning pigs. The story of burning pigs might sound too strange to be true, but it is firmly rooted in ancient writings. Several historians and military scholars of antiquity left records describing the tactic. Among them were Polyaenus, a Macedonian writer of military strategy, and Aelian, a Roman author known for his works on animals and natural history. Both men recounted how pigs were used as a weapon to disrupt war elephants, showing that this was not a myth, but a strategy remembered across centuries. One of the most famous examples occurred during the Siege of Megara in 266 BC. As the city faced enemy elephants, defenders unleashed pigs covered in pitch and set ablaze. The squeals and fiery chaos sent the elephants into a frenzy, forcing them to retreat and destroying the enemy's plans. Interestingly, in some cases, fire was not even necessary. The piercing cries of pigs alone, when amplified across a battlefield, were sometimes enough to unsettle elephants and throw their ranks into confusion. The Romans, always quick to adopt effective methods, recognized the potential of this odd tactic. They later employed it against Pyrrhus of Epirus, demonstrating that even the most unconventional tools could decide the fate of battles. To understand why burning pigs were effective, it's important to look at the nature of elephants. Despite their enormous size and strength, elephants are highly sensitive creatures. Their ears are attuned to detect even the finest of sounds, making the shrill squeals of pigs almost unbearable to them. On a noisy battlefield filled with clashing steel and war cries, the piercing, panicked cries of pigs cut through everything, striking fear deep into the animals. But it wasn't just the sound. The sight of squealing pigs running wildly, their bodies covered in flames, added an element of horror the elephants could not comprehend. On top of that came the suffocating stench of burning flesh that assaulted their powerful sense of smell. Together, these overwhelming sensations triggered pure panic. Once frightened, elephants were nearly impossible to control. Trained handlers, or mahouts, could do little once the animals bolted. A single startled elephant could set off a chain reaction, sending the entire herd into a frenzied stampede. Instead of charging the enemy, they turned back through their own lines, crushing soldiers and sowing disorder. What was once the enemy's greatest weapon suddenly became a disastrous liability, all because of a herd of burning pigs. The use of burning pigs was more than just a strange battlefield trick. It was a reflection of Rome's practical mindset in warfare. The Romans were not bound by tradition or pride when it came to strategy. They believed that victory came through adaptability, and if that meant using fire, sound, or even farm animals, so be it. Rome's military culture valued ingenuity as much as discipline. The legions were famous for their organization, but behind that order was a willingness to adopt and improve on the ideas of others. If an enemy developed a dangerous weapon, the Romans studied it carefully and devised countermeasures. War elephants presented a terrifying problem, and instead of meeting brute force with brute force, Rome sought to outthink the beasts. This willingness to embrace unconventional solutions often gave the Romans the edge. Whether constructing massive siege engines, engineering bridges across rivers, or releasing burning pigs into battle, the Roman mindset was clear. Survival and victory mattered above all. By turning a farmyard animal into a weapon, they demonstrated that cleverness could defeat size, and psychology could overpower strength. It was this combination of discipline and innovation that helped Rome build its empire. As war elephants gradually disappeared from European battlefield, so too did the tactic of burning pigs. Once elephants were no longer a threat to Roman legions, there was no reason to maintain such an unusual countermeasure. Yet the memory of these fiery animals endured in historical accounts, standing as one of the most bizarre examples of psychological warfare in antiquity. The legacy of burning pigs reminds us that ancient warfare was not always about swords, shields, or sheer strength. Often it was the strangest and most unconventional methods that turned the tide of battle. By weaponizing animals in this way, ancient commanders revealed how deeply they understood fear as a weapon, fear that could break even the strongest creature on the battlefield. Though elephants vanished from European conflicts, other armies in Asia and Africa continued to use them for centuries. Stories of pigs being used as deterrents spread far and wide, becoming a symbol of creative, if brutal, military strategy. Today, the tale endures as a lesson in innovation. Even the mightiest force can be undone by the most unexpected weakness. Rome's burning pigs proved that sometimes the strangest solutions are the most effective. So next time you think of Roman battles, don't just picture armored legions with swords and shields. Remember the flaming pigs that once sent elephants fleeing in terror. Would you have expected such a bizarre weapon in the ancient world? Let me know in the comments. And if you love history's strangest battle tactics, Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more deep dives into the weirdest corners of the past.